You're listening to the Men's Dating Mastery Podcast with host Alec Chase, bringing you the experts in dating, sex, and relationships.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 3 of MDM. In episodes 1 and 2, we went deep by talking about commitment issues and conquering fear of rejection and social anxieties. In this episode, we're going to keep things a little bit lighter. I have dating and relationship coach Chanté Salick with me to talk about approaching women. Chanté recently went on an all-girls trip to Puerto Rico where they were astounded by how much more charismatic, flirtatious, sexual, and fun the men were down there versus the guys in their hometown of Toronto. And it is no surprise to me that this came up as an episode topic. I've had this conversation dozens of times in my personal life, and I've literally lost count of how many women, and I'm talking about stunners here, I've heard complain about guys not taking action. It is true of a lot of North American cities, and it's certainly true of Toronto, which is fairly conservative in nature. It actually reminds me of a friend who moved to Toronto from New York. With New York being a more aggressive city, my friend brought that mentality with him to Toronto, which is serving him quite well actually. Women always call him out on not being from the city and regularly tell him, and I quote, that the guys here suck. That hurts. What they're talking about is men not taking action, not approaching, and just being generally afraid to communicate their interest. So check out my conversation with Chanté. There are some useful takeaways in there that will help you wake up and live life more alive. If you like this episode, then please subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and a positive review on iTunes or in whatever your favorite podcast directory is. Now on to the good stuff. Hey Chanté, welcome to the show.
Hey, Alex.
To get us kicked off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you currently do?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Hello, everyone. My name is Chanté Salick. I am a dating and relationship coach. So I work with single men and women, as well as couples, in helping them to pretty much get clear on their love life goals. And in most situations, in figuring out what is getting in their way of achieving these goals and having a fulfilling dating and love life. So, for example, helping people with confidence building or approaching the opposite sex in social scenarios, or sometimes people need help getting back into the dating world after a vicious breakup or something like that. So I just pretty much help them get clear on what exactly they're looking for in a mate and those sort of things.
That's fantastic. And obviously, one of the things that you do is you teach men how to interact with women. And that's what we're here to talk about. And actually, our conversation today is going to build on a blog post that you wrote not too long ago. And this was because you had gone to Puerto Rico and you made some interesting observations about the men there versus the men in your hometown of Toronto. So why don't you first tell us about the guys in Toronto? What are some of the things that you and your girls kind of see over and over again in how men communicate and approach women and some of the things that, they complain about?
Okay. Well, I can't speak for all men in Toronto, but the feedback that I've been getting from many of my female clients and even women I know personally is that men in Toronto seem to be very passive in their dating approaches. So what I'm hearing is women are complaining that often they'll get dressed up, they'll flirt, when they're out, they'll give eye contact, they'll smile, or they'll feel like they're doing all the right things. And men are still not getting the hints or still not approaching them in these settings. So some women think that the men are either not confident enough, or some women I've heard feel that these men want the women to do all the work, which I'll tell you, Alec, many women are very turned off at having to do this. And I also hear from the online dating side of things that many women, they're frustrated with men, again, being more passive, but taking forever to ask for their phone numbers and are way too comfortable with this impersonal form of communication. So like messaging versus actual talking or meeting up. I hear a lot of complaints about this stuff.
Right. So what I'm hearing is guys aren't taking action. And this is something I hear all the time from women. I'm not sure to what extent guys are aware of this. Men do tend to be on the passive side in Toronto, but I find it's prevalent throughout North America, perhaps not everywhere. Cities like New York tend to be a lot more aggressive in terms of the way.
For sure.
Yeah. But it's something that I have observed in, many other, North American cities. But tell me, what have you observed in Puerto Rico? How are the guys there? How are they different in the way they approach women, how they communicate with them?
Okay, good question. So my trip to Puerto Rico, it was very eye-opening for me. The men there, they're so confident within themselves and their sexuality. They were very different in comparison to how the men we've seen act up here. And again, I'm not talking about all men, because I know there are men who have no issues in this department, but I'm discussing the ones that may have. So let me just give you a little bit of background about the trip. So I traveled with a very beautiful group of women who are amazing catches in all spectrums. I'm talking about independent, great careers, beautiful looks, physical appearance, good personalities. And Alec, the men over in Puerto Rico, they weren't afraid to let us know how they felt. We were often approached. The men, no matter who they were or what they were doing at that moment, they always found their ways up to us to make friendly conversation. To put it more bluntly, I had friends who were taken out on more dates there in 1 week than they've been taken out from a guy up here who they were seeing for like a month and a half.
Wow.
And there was a particular night, it was crazy. And we would sit here and have our girl talk and discuss all this, like when we got back to the house. Like we couldn't believe the differences. And there was a particular night that we went out, which really opened my eyes to how the men were out there. So we went into the actual, streets of San Juan, and we visited a couple parties. We were with the locals now, and we were just really enjoying ourselves. It was the end of the night, and we went out to eat at a food truck, because we heard that there's this food truck that has this most amazing Puerto Rican dishes or whatever, so we had to try it. Anywho, even the food truck guy was just so confident and flirty and like just embracing us. And there was a guy that just started randomly. He took one of my girlfriend's hands. We were conversing at that point. They were complimenting us. We were, flirting, happy, laughing, everything. It was a great time. And this guy took my friend's hand and just literally started salsa dancing with her in the middle of the street. And it was a very sexy movement and dance. And we were just like, she was like blushing because she was so shy, but you could tell she was really enjoying it. And it was just so entertaining and fun. And I mean, there wasn't really even any music, but he just wanted to like dance with her. And like, to a woman, that is a very sexy thing. He made her get up and get loose and just embrace the moment. It was great. And you would never see anything like that in Toronto. People here, they seem to be too worried about what others would think of them or how they would look out there. And sorry if I'm rambling on a bit, but it seems like they truly live for the moment. That's what I picked up. Guys out there, they go out, they get the job done, they approach, they speak, they compliment, they converse, they pick you up, they take you out, they make the moves. Even the shy ones are confident enough to do something.
I think you mentioned a couple of really important points that I'd like to emphasize. First of all, and you mentioned this right from the start, is, these were attractive girls that were beautiful, that had their act together. So the guys that are listening, they can't write it off, well, maybe the girls just weren't that attractive and the guys here aren't really into them. Mm-hmm. No, that's not the point. These are attractive women. You went down to Puerto Rico, guys are all over them. Back home, not so much. Chances are it's the guys being passive. If the men in another location are finding them very attractive, they're making the moves, you can't write it off and say it's the women's. It's the guys not taking action. So I really just wanted to emphasize that.
I'm so glad you said that. And you also can't write off the fact that the men were intimidated by these successful women or, these confident women. Because I hear that a lot. A lot of women up here, and this isn't men's defense, a lot of women up here think, oh, yeah, he's probably just intimidated by me and my career and things. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think men love a confident, independent woman who has her career together. But down there was like, the men weren't even worried about that. They were just wanted to have a good time, embrace the moments. And whereas up here, like a lot of these women, like they're having a really hard time finding a good quality catch. And I'm like, how? Wow.
Right. And you gave a very specific example of a guy just grabbing one of your friends in the middle of the street and just salsa dancing with her to no music. I can just imagine guys, North America and Toronto, pick whatever city you want, being afraid to do that. And they would be afraid to do that because they would be afraid of coming off as creepy, coming off as aggressive, coming off as, a pervert. So what would you say to a guy that's got all of those concerns and is too scared to emulate that guy that you just described and be that bold and that physical and that assertive?
Well, first of all, it would be way more creepy for the guy in Puerto Rico to have done it, considering we're in a new place and we don't know these guys and we're never going to see them again after like a week or two, versus in my own home city where I'm comfortable and I know these streets. So that creepy aspect, I think it's all in how it's done. I think if it were done up here, like if it were done the right way, it wouldn't be creepy at all. There's nothing creepy about that. And also it's that mentality of don't want to come off too aggressive enough, which is what is making these guys shine in a spotlight versus the guys out here with that mentality. Women, like a lot of women want a guy to be the aggressor. They want him to do stuff like that. They're waiting. They really are. And, a lot of them have their own shy side, and especially these women who are very independent, so to speak, career women, they need that extra dominant man because they're already have a dominating personality. You know what I mean? So you would be really surprised at how many women are really waiting for guys to step up and just do this type of stuff and show them that it's not that serious. Let's have fun. Let's live for the moment.
So, and I think you're getting at something more important here when you're saying, let's have fun, let's not be so serious and live in the moment. I think that ties in with something you said a little bit earlier, and that's you can be assertive and you can be more physical and a little bit more take charge if it's done in the right way, right? So you can do it in a way that's off-putting, or you can do it in a way that's very exciting. So let's talk about that. What are some of the qualities? What are some of the behavior patterns that a guy should be exhibiting if he does want to, take his game up a notch and be a more assertive, take charge kind of guy?
There's a lot of things that a guy could do. I often hear women tell me that they like a man that's very charismatic. If a guy is confident in who he is and he has a friendly tone and he starts off with a compliment or engages in a conversation topic that's non-threatening, smile with the girl, make her laugh. A woman's immediate impression is not to feel threatened or uncomfortable if a man could present those warm, fuzzy feelings inside of her.
Right. So when you say charisma, what that means to me is if you decide that you want to, or if a guy decides that he wants to approach a woman, you do it in a way that's confident, fun, with a smile and a sense of humor. If you are kind of looking away and then hesitating, and then you kind of haphazardly make that approach, that's going to be creepy.
Well, right, because then she'll be wondering, what's he thinking about? Is he looking at me, or is he looking at someone behind me? And then you're gonna do the look over your shoulder, is there someone behind me that he's looking at? And then when she realizes that he's looking at her, it's gonna be oh, why is he staring like that? It's not even a sexy stare, it's a creepy stare. If a man just knows he wants something and he just goes for it, a woman doesn't have time to think twice about it. She doesn't have time to think, oh, he's creepy, or oh, he's looking at me weird, because he just does it. He just sees her. Wow, she's beautiful. I'm going to go up to her. And he just does it. She's going to be taken aback. She's going to be oh my God, thank you so much. If he says a compliment to her or something. Women love compliments. And also, you never know if that woman hasn't been complimented in a long time. You just might make her entire day.
So this, I find, can be a topic that's often misconstrued by guys. So there are a lot of guys that go around and shower women with compliments, and then they complain that they're not getting the results they want. And I think there are different ways to compliment a woman.
What do you mean?
So you can compliment a woman from a place that's strong and confident, and then you can compliment a woman from a place of neediness and insecurity. So, there are guys that go up to her and say, oh, you're so beautiful, and, it would be so great if you could just let me take you out on a date, versus a guy that comes up to her and is like,
right.
Hey, I'm attracted to you. I'm a pretty good catch, but I think you're pretty cute. I want to let you know that. I think there's a difference between those two. What do you think?
Huge difference. The first one was like, it was very like hesitant. It was also very, as you said, needy. And it was almost like he needed her permission. The second one was very like, I'm aware of who I am. And whether you say yes to me or not, I'm still going to continue feeling the way I feel about myself because I'm secure within myself. And hey, if you want to come along for the ride, I would love to take you because I see you as a catch as well. And you know what? Mm-hmm. Women love that confidence. It's kind of it can come off as borderline arrogant, but not so much like if it's done right. You know what I mean? But that indifference, that's the word. Being indifferent towards a situation, I think makes you come off as more confident because you're not needy.
Yeah, and there's actually a very specific reason why I brought that up, and that's because kind of over the last, decade or so, there's been a lot of books and a lot of materials for guys that have come out in the market. And one of the things that's been put forth is, you can't compliment a woman. You can't compliment a woman because it's like you're giving away your power.
Oh, God.
Yes. And I think when they were saying that, they were touching on something real, but completely missed the mark on it. So there were a lot of guys that supplicated themselves a lot to women. So they were afraid to be themselves. They were afraid to say what they think. And they were always kind of seeking that approval that you mentioned from women. And when guys like that are complimenting, they're not received well. Whereas a guy that's kind of confident and assertive, and he makes that compliment, it's attractive. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because there's a lot of guys out there that are afraid to give a woman a compliment because they're afraid that, they're going to be perceived as weak or needy.
No, it's just simple. Don't overdo it. And I've witnessed guys overdoing it because they have this needy syndrome. So I know exactly what you're talking about with that. But when a man's more secure within himself, he gives a compliment. It comes from a good place. And the woman receives it well, and it's not overdone. I think when you overdo it, then the woman is turned off. Then she's like, okay, relax. I heard you. You don't need to keep telling me. I get it. I'm beautiful. But if a guy's when she gets all done up and she's really, or even when she's in her casual attire and he's like, wow, you look stunning no matter what you wear. She'll love that. I can't agree with guys not complimenting women. I don't think that's a good idea. That's me personally. I don't think that's a good idea because women love words of affirmation, like praise and, to feel like she's beautiful. And we put so much work into our looks, our appearance and our hair and our makeup and our dressing and smelling good. And to not get complimented, it's just it's weak.
You're talking about being appreciated for the effort that you put in, just like any human being would want to be appreciated for the effort that they put in.
Right.
I wanted to jump back a little bit to what you had indirectly touched on earlier. You were describing some of the ways men behaved in Puerto Rico. And we obviously live in a pretty different society. Toronto in particular, although it's, large and cosmopolitan, I find it still pretty conservative. So with that in mind, would it be wise for guys to, behave in the ways that guys in Puerto Rico or, in other Latin American countries that are generally more extroverted and a little spicier? Would it be wise for them to emulate that behavior, or should they tailor it a little bit to be more congruent with, the local societal norms? And if they do, then how? Or maybe they don't.
Well, Puerto Rico, it's, as you said, it's different from Toronto in so many ways. Like, it's very Americanized, but it's different in many ways. Culture plays a huge role in anything, and the men up here, they simply weren't raised in the ways or environment in which the men up there are or were. So we can't ask people to be something that they're not. But I do feel that many men out there, they get it in many ways what women want when it comes to certain things, more so than some do up here. So they would definitely have to tailor it, but I'm not really one to follow societal norms. So that's not how I would say, like, they have to tailor it. I simply think that the men up here just need to let loose a little bit and have more fun living in the moment. You really don't see enough of that. And that's the sort of stuff that really takes a woman's breath away.
I guess what I'm getting at is a little bit more, not so much from the man's perspective, but from the women's perspective. So say you and your girls were in Puerto Rico. When you were in Puerto Rico and you were interacting with men, that was done against a backdrop of a society and an environment where that was normal and typical.
Yes.
And the way that people generally behaved. If a man was to behave like that here in the streets of Toronto, he'd stand out, right? He'd stand out from the way that, the average person behaves. And I'm wondering if that's an issue.
I'm trying to visualize this as you're saying this, and I'm painting the picture in my head. And the only thing that I can think that comes off is that you said is that he would stand out. And to me, anyone that stands out is attractive to a woman, because it goes back to the charismatic, the charisma of the person's personality. Like, that's bound to stand out. And this is just going back in history. But any great leader was different. Very, very successful people, they are different. So if you tied into even just that element alone, what makes you stand out in a crowd? What do you think is going to attract a woman's attention? Doing the same thing everybody is doing, or doing something that no one's doing? Women, let me tell you, women remember the little details. They remember a random stranger who came up to them and said something really nice on a random day. They remember little details of a date that a guy took them on that no guy's ever taken them on before. They remember a kiss that blew them away. They remember the little things like that stood out to them. So if a guy was to emulate the behavior or just be more confident in himself and just own his personality, and if he feels like doing something quirky and he just does it, hey, that might attract the right girl for him, who is attracted to a guy who's not afraid to be himself. It's not even about like a Toronto man being exactly like men in Puerto Rico. Like, everyone's their own person, but this is just about people. Like, I really feel like people up here just care way too much. One, what other people think. Two, about things like technology. Three, like, work. When we were out there, that's exactly it. No one's asking anyone to be like anyone else. It's just, don't be afraid, because, rejection, it's there, but like, you should be more afraid of losing a great opportunity.
If we were to take the conversation we just had as a whole, and if you could just take out one specific, very tangible piece of advice that guys could go and apply to their lives immediately in order to improve it, what would it be? And when I say specific, I mean, think of a guy that's just really taking that first step towards, improving his dating life. Something very specific, something very actionable.
Well, okay, before I say anything like that, I just want to say I've read that, this was from Matthew Hussey. I read in his book, Get the Guy, that, a lot of men are really, really scared to approach a woman. And they don't feel like, there's many reasons why they won't do it in a social scenario. But one thing that I think can take away the fear of men feeling like they're going to get rejected or feeling like they might be too aggressive is that I don't think they realize how many women are in the market. And if my friends were approached the same ways as they were out there, up here, they would recognize it and they would react to it in a positive way because they are in the market. They are waiting, they are looking, they are waiting for these men to take action. So with that being said, I think my only tangible piece of advice is it just goes back into the theme of the conversation, which is don't be afraid to act on your feelings, as you said. And you can't be afraid of rejection, because if you're afraid of rejection, then you'll never do anything. If you see a woman you're attracted to, go up and tell her how, it doesn't matter if you get the number or not. It's in the same breath, like, you're going to get some great practice in, so who cares?
So I think you made some great points in there. What I'm hearing is, first of all, understand that there are a lot of women in the market, and they are actually waiting and wanting for you to take action. So the best thing you can do is to approach and take action.
Yes, simply put. And I know that, a lot of men feel like it's a breath of fresh air when a woman makes the move. And I totally think that that's cool too. But there are also that group of women who have too much pride, and they really do appreciate when the man does the chasing and she does the receiving. So, that being said, there you go.
I think that's a great note to end on. Before we say goodbye, can you tell the guys how they can get a hold of you if they want to learn more about what you do or get in touch with you and talk to you directly?
Sure. You can visit my website, which is www.coachchante, so that's coach, CHANTE.com. And on there, you can follow me on all the social medias, my number, you can send me a message, read my articles, stay in touch that way.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And of course, the website and the link will be in the show notes as well. So guys, if you're driving, no need to crash your car. You can go to the website when you're in front of your computer, and all the resources will be right there, and you'll be able to get a hold of Chanté that way. Chanté, thanks so much for being on the podcast with me today. It's been a great conversation. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Alec. And you enjoy the rest of your day. I hope I was helpful.
I hope you liked that conversation, guys. If this show has captured your attention, then please send me an email. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, what you would like to hear me cover in future episodes, and who you would like to hear on the podcast. My email is alec@mensdatingmastery.com. That's Alec with a C. Nothing makes me happier than getting an email from the people who listen to this show. And if you are enjoying the show, then please take a moment to subscribe and leave a 5-star rating along with a positive review in iTunes or in whatever your favorite podcast directory is. That will go a long way to keeping this show going and help me attract the best guests so that I can continue to bring you value. Also, don't forget to check out mensdatingmastery.com, where you will find all the episodes to this podcast, my blog, social media links, and where you can subscribe to the newsletter to keep abreast of the latest content from MDM. I don't spam, but I will occasionally send you some great new content that you would not want to miss. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to Men's Dating Mastery, a podcast dedicated to improving the lives of men and the women around them.